Red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry. How much fish would a catfish catch if a catfish could catch fish? It's all right, isn't it? I'm not a pheasant plucker. I'm a pheasant plucker's son, and I'll sit here plucking pheasants till my pheasant plucking's done. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? There we are. And I'll still mess my lines up.
What did I say?
During the meanwhilest.
During the meanwhilest. No, I don't like that at all.
Well, hello, it's Dexter and me back on YouTube with yet another fun-filled, action-packed, information-laden video. And today it's all about shooting portfolio or Instagram 500px worthy images with a phone. Where's my phone? I've lost it. Not my phone, because my phone is an ancient iPhone 10 something. iPhone 10, yeah, something like that. So it just has two quite rudimentary cameras on. I think they're either 8 or 10 megapixel, I'm not sure. Somebody will correct me. Anyway, it's an oft-used phrase by photographers that goes along the lines of the best camera in the world is the one you've got on you. And I guess the sentiment behind that is it doesn't matter if you're out and you've stumble across that killer moment or that perfect 5 minutes of light. If your Sony Alpha 1 or GFX 100 or whatever is in your camera bag in your house, it's no good. And if the only camera you've got with you is your phone, well, that's the best camera in the world right there. Anyway, yeah, I wish I could have a pound for every time I've heard that saying. I'd be quite rich by now. Anyway, these days, most of us have some sort of mobile phone or tablet or other sort of device with a camera on it. And most of the times now, these cameras are extremely good. I mean, in fact, sometimes they're more camera than phone, to be honest. You can get phones now with like Leica camera systems, Hasselblad camera systems, all sorts on it. Phones with 4 built-in cameras, for like portraits, telephotos, macro, super telephoto. Well, the options these days tend to be absolutely endless, and phone cameras have come so far since the days of sort of primitive VGA pixelated images. But whatever, and however you employ it, phone cameras now mean that you never miss that important moment. But again, there's a lot of buts. How do you go about making an image instead of just like capturing a snapshot? Well, before we go any further, I'd urge you to have a look at Alan Stanway's Instagram. Now, Alan comments on these videos quite frequently. He's a regular viewer and commenter. Now, he shot exclusively with a phone for some time and posted his phone images on Instagram, and to be honest, they're better than anything I can do. So I would urge you to go along and have a look at Alan's Instagram, and I will link it below. And don't worry, he has given me permission to do so. I'm not just sort of being cheeky and kind of like including his channel, his Instagram without asking. I wouldn't do that. Anyway, I'm going to take you through the steps that I take now to ensure that the phone images I capture are worthy of publication on my Instagram or 500px. They're not as good as Alan's, okay, so don't judge me on these, but these are my steps. Anyway, whether your phone camera is your main camera or not, I would highly recommend downloading some sort of camera app. Rather than using your phone's default built-in one. The reason for that being is that default apps tend to give you very little control over exposure settings, whereas the camera I use, which is built into my Lightroom Creative Cloud subscription, gives me much more control over the images I take. I can control within certain parameters, shutter speed and ISO, but also white balance and exposure compensation. But more importantly, what one of these phone apps will give you, if you get the right one, is the ability to create either a DNG or sometimes even a RAW file, rather than a JPEG that your camera will normally capture. What a RAW file and a DNG file will then give you is much more leeway and headroom in post-processing your image, and we'll come on to that a little bit later on. If you don't want to download some sort of camera app, that's fine, but learn how to use your phone's camera properly so that you will know where to focus, and in most cases your phone camera will allow you some control over exposure compensation or brightness levels in your image, so check out how that works. Now, having said all this, I tend 90% of the time to use my iPhone's built-in camera system, and that's because I rarely use my phone to capture an image. I've normally got my camera with me. What I usually use my phone camera for is firing off some test shots to see if a composition works, because you've got a much bigger screen to look at on the back of your phone than you have on your camera, and it's usually a much brighter screen, so you can look at your composition on the back of your phone a lot better. Or I will use it if I'm out and about to shoot something and then go back to it at a later date. Now, about a year ago, I was out shooting Carrick-Kenning Castle, when I stumbled across a lone tree, which I wanted to go back and shoot because the light at the time wasn't favourable to shoot the tree there and then. Lockdown has intervened, of course, in the interim, and I haven't been back there, so I am hoping to get back there soon. And depending on when these videos go out, I may have already gone back and put that video out. I'm not sure. We'll see. But sometimes I may not have my camera with me, and I'll see something that might be a one-off, or I may never get a chance to get back to that location again. So then I'll use my Lightroom camera and pull out all the stops to squeeze all the goodness I can out of my phone's tiny, tiny little sensor. And in doing so, I think I've got some, or what I consider to be some really good images. Sometimes I'm happier with the phone image than I am with the actual camera one, and I sort of question my camera choice. No. Anyway, no matter how good your phone camera is, image quality is going to be limited by its sensor size. Dynamic range is usually nowhere near as good as what you will get out of even a Micro Four Thirds camera, because the sensor is so small in a phone. And even with computational photography, you're not going to get the same dynamic range as you get out of a proper camera. At least I don't think so anyway. So therefore, really, if you are shooting an important image with your phone's camera, it's vital to know its limitations. Again, if your phone is your only camera, I would recommend investing in some sort of mini tripod or some sort of tripod mount, so you can attach your phone to, a GorillaPod or a tripod or whatever. And you can go even further if you want these days. You can get special lens attachments and filters and things like that. But I think if you're going to do that, you might as well just as well invest in a full-on camera system, to be honest, and be done with it. Anyway, once you've dialed in your composition and your exposure, it's time to focus your image. Normally it's done by touching somewhere on the screen for your focal point, and normally your phone's camera will be much more limited in the sort of size of that focal point. Like on most cameras, we can get right down to a tiny single focal point. I don't think you can do that on most phones. Certainly you can't on my iPhone. You've got quite a large zone or area of focus. And then when it comes to actually shooting your image, even though phone sensors tend to be stabilized, and because the sensor is so small, stabilizing it is quite easy, or the stabilization is quite advanced, I would still recommend using your camera's built-in timer, so you can eliminate as much camera shake as you possibly can. Anyway, once you've got your image, then it's time to edit it. Now, I don't edit on my phone. I tend to import all my phone images into Lightroom and import them that way. But there are some great dedicated phone editing apps. If you subscribe to Adobe's Creative Cloud, you can download Lightroom Mobile and edit through that. Another app I've used with some good results, although I don't use it anymore, is Snapseed. That gives you plenty of options for editing. But you have to remember that, this is a phone image you're editing. Now, I can't speak for modern phones because I got an ancient brick, but some phones these days shoot quite advanced raw images. I'm thinking of the iPhone 12 Pro Max here. I think they can shoot Apple Pro RAW or Apple ProRes, something like that. I haven't seen an image created with one of those cameras, and certainly haven't edited one. But if you have, and you're watching this, perhaps you could leave a comment below as to how successful you've been. Otherwise, you have to remember that this is a phone image, and there are certain limits to your editing before the image will start to inevitably fall apart. Now, this is where your capture and getting that best image that you possibly can in the best light you possibly can becomes more and more important. As any really heavy editing, as I said, will quickly see the phone image come apart at the seams. Once you have shot and then edited your image, don't just post them online. I've printed some of my phone images, and as I said, I think my iPhone is, I'm sure it's 10 megapixels max, I'm not sure. I've printed some A3 plus, so that's 19 by 13 inch images. And obviously, while they don't stand up to the quality of an image shot with my GFX or X-T3 even, they are passable. You can certainly hang them up on your wall. I probably wouldn't want to sell one, but they are good enough. The images are good enough. And I'll pop one up now that I printed of Mumble's Lighthouse, and this I printed to A4, and it's absolutely fine. No, I'm not saying that every time you whip your phone out to get a picture of your kids or of your dog like I do, that you should employ all these measures. But I think it's a good habit to get into if you are out on a shoot and you want to take some images with your phone. Pull out all the stops. Use a little tripod. Use a camera app, and set your exposure manually. Have some degree of control over white balance and ISO and things like that. Even if you don't want to download one, sort of get familiar with your camera's built-in phone. So most of them have some sort of exposure compensation or brightness control. So use that to squeeze all the goodness out of your phone's tiny little sensor. Anyway, that's it from Dexter and me for this week. I hope you found this video in some way useful and may have learnt something, though I doubt it very, very much. Anyway, Dexter and I will be along with another video very soon, maybe even next weekend, who knows. And until then, stay safe, stay well, look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye. Could be that for you.